Hello, hello. This is Postgres FM. I'm Nikolai from Postgres AI, and as usual, with me here, Michael from PG Mustard. Hi, Michael. How are
Hello,
you doing?
Nikolai. I am good. How are you?
Okay. I'm
No,
very
how
good.
are you? Yeah.
I'm very good. I'm very good. Okay, so we are going to discuss PSQL or PSQL once again. Last time we compared it to graphical UIs, graphical tools. And this, it was my idea to discuss it once again, but just pure PSQL, how to use it in various cases, why use it, and maybe some tips and tricks, right?
Yeah, looking forward to this one. You say last time we talked about it, but do you know that was like 18 months ago?
Yeah, well, I was trying to say we discussed it last time. I mean, in this area,
Yeah.
when we discussed PSQL particularly, right?
I just couldn't believe it when I looked it up how long ago that was. So yeah,
Your
amazing.
mind is focused, is targeted to find gotchas everywhere since last episode, and you try to find it in my speech now. Okay, this is good. But just for today, let's focus on PSQL, and I have some experience. I like it, which is good, right? For conversation. You said you don't have a lot of experience with it, but you may be better prepared as usual. So maybe you know some recent changes or something. Where can we start? Let's maybe discuss why, right? Because we have Python, we have various tools. Why PSQL? What's your answer to this?
Well, yeah. So I don't feel like I'm an advanced user of PSQL personally. I have to use, I try to use it sometimes. I try to keep familiar with it so that if I need to, the nice thing about PSQL is it's always available. We talked about this last time, but if it's somebody else's database or it's my own, it's always available if I need to do it from my mobile via via like a console, I can do that. It's very accessible, but I don't feel like I'm an advanced user. The reason I've had to get more familiar with it as well, though, is like helping diagnose issues. So I see a lot of query plans, and query plan formatting can vary quite a lot depending on the editor. And PSQL or PSQL has a bunch of formatting and alignment options and different pages, and each one has its own formatting quirks. So supporting all those different formats for people copy and pasting explain plans has given me some familiarity as well. But yeah, on the coding side of things, I don't have much experience at all. But I did check out what was the program called that you said? Was it Postgres DBA?
PSPG.
Postgres underscore DBA?
Postgres DBA. Yeah. This is a bunch of tools and interactive menu I've built using some tricks in PSQL. It was long ago, but I still use it sometimes, and some people use it. It's quite interesting. Right. So it sounds like you say it's always available, and I partially agree. It's available if you install Postgres with client packages. If you install only server packages, or if you are a user of RDS, it's not available, right? Or maybe user of, I don't know, Supabase. PSQL, maybe it's not that natural because there is editor or Neon, for example. There is an editor right in browser, and maybe it's closer for this particular packaging. I don't know, like there's no PSQL by default there, right?
Some cloud providers you can. So I know on Google Cloud, which is what I use myself, you can. There's a console. There's a cloud console that you can get access to.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, some you can.
And I think this is not, they do it not bringing PSQL to browser, but maybe like emulating console running on server. This is what I suspect. But
I assume so, yeah.
Yeah, this is good, but others don't do this, unfortunately, for me. I would prefer everyone to provide a PSQL and make it available like it is when you deal with pure open source Postgres, right? So to me, the reason why PSQL, there's a bunch of reasons. First of all, it's the only official and well-maintained client. if we consider all the clients, regardless, like terminal-based or graphical, doesn't matter. This is the only officially maintained client. Well, if we don't count PGBench as client, right? Because it's also client, but it's very
Good
specific. It's very specific. It's also official, well maintained. Somehow included to server packaging for Ubuntu and Debian. I don't know why. Unlike PSQL, but it's not regular client because it's the only like it's needed for different tasks, for benchmarks, for research of performance and so on. PSQL is a universal client, terminal based, and this is the only one. There is no graphical tools, graphical interfaces officially supported by Postgres itself. Right, Postgres shipped with Postgres and so on, and pgadmin is also a third-party tool.
Yeah.
Right. So, which means the like release cycle, quality, features, you can see changes, new stuff added to PSQL, right, in release notes of Postgres itself. This is good, right? Quality and also trust, right? So when you say explain plans formatting can be very strange. Well, from PSQL, you actually said it's from PSQL can be very strange, but yeah, and I'm going on purpose to mix PSQL and PSQL as we discussed, right? Because I don't care about this.
Same.
Yeah. So this is specific case plans, right? I know this pain of bad formatting, shitty formatting, and you need to deal with it, and it's like it's a lot of pain. But in all other areas, when you do something, you expect behavior from PSQL like the same, like the true behavior, right? I can give you an example. I had some small project to convert something. I don't remember. Maybe to delete like many million rows or convert some table to something. I don't remember. Maybe it was integer 4 to integer 8 primary key conversion. So we decided to code it purely in PSQL and SQL, right? So you just combine files. I like to name such files .psql, so it emphasizes that it's not only pure SQL, but they can have some commands only PSQL supports, like \if, for example, and we will talk about it in a few minutes. And something was interesting, like some query was working there, everything as expected. We had tests, all good. But attempt by some other developers in that company, it was a huge client. They went to IPO like a few months after we started working with them. It was great. And they coded like similar stuff, but in their system, it was Java actually. And same queries didn't work well. They didn't work at all. And when I started troubleshooting, I noticed that in one of graphical UIs, it's absolutely the same behavior as in their code. And that graphical program was also built using Java. So I realized it's JDBC. It was something with float, rounding rules or something. It was very different behavior compared to what I saw in PSQL. And this discrepancy in behavior, it can be big deal. If you want to have something reliable and supported for many years, it's good to deal with PSQL.
That's a great point. I use it for debugging purposes as well. Like it helps rule something out. If I am seeing some behavior via my application or via a graphical user interface, and it behaves the same in PSQL, I'm gaining confidence that there's a problem. Like it helps rule out. I assume there's not a bug in PSQL. Like that's a default assumption of mine. I'm probably wrong. Probably going to trip me up one day, but it hasn't so far.
Yeah, sitting in PSQL, talking to Postgres, you're basically closer to Postgres, right? There is no, there's like JDBC adds something, and if it's something third-party tool, it also adds something, and this something like these layers can change what you see, and this can be a bug or intentional, but this I always like. It's like with monitoring. If I see some graph, like I don't understand. Unless I see the code, how the information was gathered and processed, I don't understand what is presented, and trust is not like high in this area, and there is always doubt. Am I seeing this? This is spike really like what I'm thinking it is, right? So this is about Rust and so on, and also features. Like features are great, and I'm sure I don't know all of them. I'm constantly learning and finding new stuff which I was not aware of for many years. So these are my basic ideas why I use it a lot.
Yeah, so actually I had a question for you on that front. When I was looking through the docs page for pSQL, like the number of options and flags, and there's just so many. When you're working with it, how do you learn about new features? Do you think, I wonder if it can do X, and then you look up, can it do X? Or is it more a case of every now and again you'll flick through and think, how do you learn more about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a mix. So sometimes I just know what is possible, and I don't remember. My favorite comment is \??
Yeah.
And \h for help with SQL, and there is like a lot of documentation. It's right there. So like help and the grammar of SQL itself, it's there. But sometimes I see something which, like, I'm thinking, is it possible? For example, like if we want to process a lot of rows in batches, of course it's good to write some full-fledged program using Python or Go or anything with monitoring, logging, and like. But if you need it quickly, my usual approach, like ad hoc processing, it's needed really soon. We need the result right now. I just write a pSQL code using \watch, right? And I was always like, okay, watch is good, like it's for looping, right? You run some query which takes a batch and process it. For example, deleting, right? We need to clean up some data. And we cannot delete in Postgres. It's a very bad idea to delete many millions of rows in a single transaction.
We did an episode.
Yeah. So massive delete can hit you. If you need to delete like millions of rows in huge table, it's better to do in batches. And it's easy to write some CTE, quite easy. To write some CTE, finding the scope of work right now, like 1,000 rows or something. Delete them and report in a nice way, maybe even with progress bar, which has like this what I like. And not to forget about vacuum, of course, and that tuples and processing.
We talked about it, yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, so we're talking about watch, \watch.
Right.
Badly named, probably. What do you think of the name?
Watch?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It was created, I think, to, like you have a select from pgist activity. You, for example, aggregate queries by state, understand like how many active backends we have, maybe wait events as well, and you just observe them. And that's why watch, I think.
I get it, but like repeat or something that gives it a little bit more of like an idea of what it's actually going to do.
Your mind definitely is targeted to find gotchas. I'm with you here. It's not perfect naming at all.
Yeah.
100%.
So yeah, super cool feature. I've even seen it used. The time I saw it used most recently was I was watching a Patroni demo for when I was preparing for a few episodes ago. Alexander Kukushkin used watch in one session to keep querying a database, like while trying to fail it over to show latencies and to show what happened. Like, did any queries actually fail? What was the latency of the failover? That kind of thing. It was a really cool use case to continually query a database.
Right, exactly. Watch is useful, but it's I think it was not until Postgres 16 when like we had with Andrei and Kirk, we had Postgres hacking sessions, and we extended it to support number of loops you want, because the only option, the sleep time between your queries. In documentation, another gotcha, I think it was described as interval time. But if you take into consideration the duration of query itself, it's not counted. So it's only sleep time after one command finished before running the next one, right? And the idea was like before Postgres 16, the only option was like specified time. By default, I think it's 2 seconds. I don't know why 2 seconds. Specify some time. You can specify like 0.1 100 milliseconds sleep time, like very like quickly running queries in a loop, and it's infinite. Unless it fails. If it fails, it stops. By the way, it could be an option again. I'm just thinking right now, maybe there should be an option saying, if it fails, still continue, right? Because
Interesting.
default behavior is just to stop. In some cases, I would prefer continue. And like right now, I have such situations when I need, even if query fails, still continue with the loop. In this case,
Or like the failover testing. If you're doing failover testing, even if
like
one of them
Kukushkin's.
fails, yes, exactly.
Exactly. But watch behaves like it just stops. And if I need this behavior, I just need to go to like shell level, bash or any like ZSH, and there I need to bash usually because I don't run such things from my laptop. I'm usually running everything in Tmax right on the server or very close to the server in cloud. So if like California internet is very bad, you know it, and even Starlink sometimes is down. So in this case, I'm not losing my session. Tmax is great. And if query fails, if you need to continue, I'm forced to go to shell while sleep 1, for example. Not while true, because if you do while true, Control-C won't work properly in many cases. It's very annoying. If you sleep first, then do something. So while sleep 1, well, how many seconds you want to have between running psql. In this case, if Control-C will work when you need to interrupt it. And in this case, also you can have some additional stuff saying if command is failed, for example, vertical bars, right? A couple of vertical bars, or report it failed, and then continue the loop, right?
I was reading through you're mentioning some improvements that have happened in pSQL recently, which is cool. That I think it's not necessarily obvious that it's continuing to improve. And I did notice I didn't read into the details, but somebody improved it recently to make Control-C work better. So I think maybe in one of the more recent, I'm not sure it fixes that.
I'm not sure it's related. It's interesting. Maybe I need to check. It was in Postgres 17 release notes, right? Yeah, I also remember something, but I didn't connect dots here. So let's unwrap my story because we have like already, it's a maze, right?
Layers, yeah.
So the idea was we want to be able to specify how many loops we need, and to do that we extended basically this tiny grammar, right, or tiny format. And allow not to specify basically any options, the named options. So we added we converted this, not interval, how to properly say, like the break between sleep time between two commands executed.
Yeah, sleep time's good.
Yeah, I think we call it sleep. Yeah. I by the way, since I don't see Postgres 16, it was released in 16. I don't see 16 too often in production. I'm still not got used to this what we developed, right? It's interesting. So I still mostly all the time I use PSQL, and I must correct myself actually. In many cases we have PSQL already 16, even if we work with old servers. So it's just my mind problem. I need to adjust my habits. I need to adjust my habits and start using what we developed. But second option was, and this is the whole purpose of that work, is to allow us to specify a number of loops you need. If you know you don't need more than something, that's it. But interesting fact that the inspiration of that, I'm checking, it's interval I, number of seconds, it's a wrong naming, but it is as it is, interval. With understanding it's not actually interval, because it's interval not taking into account the duration of the command executed, which can take actually minutes or like hours in extreme cases. And C or count equals something. This is a number of loops you need, right? And that's great. But actually, original idea why we thought about this was many times I had work. I process a lot of rows in batches, and I need to stop. And to stop, I usually used division by zero. This is a very old trick. It works. I know watch will stop if there is an error. So I just, when nothing to process anymore, I just divide by number of rows to process. It's 0, so it stops because of division by 0. And
Yeah.
interesting, then in Postgres 17, it was implemented, right? Already not by us, by Greg Sabino Mullane, I think. Allow PSQL watch to stop after minimum number of rows returned. Funny thing, this is exactly what I needed, but we implemented some different parts around this problem. So you now can say m or min rows, mir underscore rows equals some number of rows, and you can say 0. If we have 0, that's it. This is great, right?
Yeah, again, a weird name. Like, is it 0 or is it 1?
A number of rows returned. If you return, for example, if you delete returning star and it returned 0, then it's not, you need to stop. You think it should be? Yeah. Well, let's double check. But let's not to be like super. We are not providing some like lesson or reference. We are talking what's possible.
Yeah, true.
There is documentation, and you can try and learn. So now it's possible. You don't need division by 0 anymore. The only issue with this I have is that I did like, and I still do like, my approach reporting, like, progress bar and so on, many stuff, many pieces of information. When you process a batch, you report a lot of stuff. In this case, I cannot use this. I cannot say, I always have some rows reported in result. Like usually just one row, many columns, like number of rows like we processed, what's left, like progress, percentage, anything. So I think will I still use division by 0 after I got used to Postgres 17? I'm not sure, right?
Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. And I wanted to emphasize there are a couple of areas. There are two big areas. First big area where you can use PSQL. First big area is interactive mode. And sometimes we use watch there for just observing something. This is where name plays well. Or we use like various advanced stuff. I got used to \gx instead of semicolon. By the way, both watch and GX don't require semicolon. I know even Andrei learned it from me. It's not obvious. They can be your like end of command semicolon replacement for it.
So GX, I looked this up. It's send the last query. It's send that to the server, right?
Right, but it's expanded. So the idea is it's like semicolon, but it's expanded. So it basically, if you have very wide result set, many columns, but low number of rows, for example, just one. GX is much better because it's equivalent to switching to expanded mode using \x. So you see one column on one line, second column different line, and so on. Like you see it like transponded, right? And yeah, I just have a habit to use it when I just select something. Like for example, select star from users where ID or email equals this, and I want to see all columns. I just use GX \gx instead of semicolon, and I don't need to deal with like this formatting or horizontal scrolling if you have PSPG installed. PSPG I didn't mention. I do like PSPG, which provides much better output and like pagination in PSQL. Very great addition to PSQL.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It even does like horizontal scrolling within the terminal. It's pretty cool. And did you know PSPG is even mentioned in the PSQL docs? That's pretty cool. I didn't realize that till today.
Unfortunately, no, because it's third. I think Postgres docs don't mention third-party tools almost. Maybe except pgadmin. I don't know if pgadmin is mentioned in Postgres docs.
I have not seen it there, but it's very rare to see a third-party tool mentioned in the documentation. In my experience, at least.
Maybe never.
Well, this is third-party though. PSPG.
Yeah, it's third-party.
So not never.
It's not mentioned. PSPG is it mentioned? It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in the docs.
It's a surprise for me.
Yeah, same. That's why I said. In PSQL, it's mentioned under paging. like it makes sense to
That's
to
great.
send a pager.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's good, and yeah, I like it a lot. I use it all the time when I can. So yeah, also colors. It provides good colors, menu, interactive menu, so many cool stuff. Yeah, so back to watch and \gx, \watch and \gx. Semicolon is not needed, and even more, like if you use semicolon with watch, you will get basically extra call, which may be not good. When you start counting already with new options, new option count, it's extra call. Right. Okay. What else? Let's talk about interactive mode and what like tricks are worth knowing. Additionally, in addition to \gx, what's your
So when
favorite?
you say interactive mode, do you mean like a user, like doing administrative tasks or
Right.
doing some ad hoc queries? Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah. What are your favorite things when you rarely touch PSQL?
I think they're not. Well, mine aren't going to be on the advanced side of things. But yeah, some of the alignment things are quite useful. So like \A can toggle off alignment if for any reason you want it. So I complained about
what's the
things
reason?
at the beginning.
What's the reason to use to turn off alignment?
If you want, like, if you're doing some stuff with JSON, for example,
Yeah.
the JSON output, you don't want like a pretty nice. So it's a nice feature of PSQL that you get tables formatted as tables with characters, but you don't want that if you're dealing with.
I
JSON
always
data.
use it when I want to see the body of function or trigger function or stored procedure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you use \df or sf, it was changed, right? df plus. I always used \df plus, but I think it got like this behavior was deprecated or removed, and you need to use \sf or something. So you need to see function using s. And in this case, if you don't run \a before that, the formatting will screw all the indentation of the code, and it's hard to understand. But this is like also my habit: \a, then \sf plus, and see the function, understand what it's doing, and so on. Then you can even, if it's not production, you can edit the function using \ef. And like this probably also gotcha. We like have my mind is also this echo from last episode, and those who didn't listen to it, like it was interesting episode to me as well. So when you use \ef, and I usually use VI, right? VI, I'm big VI fan. You go to VI, you edit everything, then you, as usual, like colon WQ, like save and exit, write and quit. And then, you know this or no?
I'm not a VI user, but I've read like \E is one of those tips that often comes up with like you can just use it to edit anything. It doesn't have to be a
right,
function.
but specifically for functions, there is a gotcha. It's
Yeah.
not about VI. You can, I think, use nano or anything and still bump into this problem. The problem is you think it's written and saved, but Postgres prompt, well, not PSQL prompt, shows something like its transaction is not closed, right? You need a semicolon to finalize it. And this is not expected. And I'm still like many years, like I deal with it. I know this. Every time I deal with it, I'm thinking, why is it so? I know like there should be some explanation why it's so, but yeah. So after \ef, always semicolon. Yeah.
Or \gx.
Well, interesting.
I don't know if that would work. Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, maybe. What else? I like \set, and I use it from time to time. There are two cases. I use it when I need some variable. Of course, this moves us already to programming mode, not interactive mode.
There's overlap, right?
Right, there is overlap for sure. I like to use it sometimes to set something, to have short command, for example. For example, we talked about buffers in explain analyze a lot, and you can just define some like colon EAV or EAB, for example, or just colon something. I don't know. And this word will mean
in my docs for getting a query plan, because we recommend explain in parentheses, analyze, format JSON, buffers, verbose, settings. While like, in our example, we just do :EA as the alias for that. But I don't personally use it. I personally, because I'm pretty much always working on the same machine, I just have a text expansion tool on macOS that does something similar for when I'm in interactive mode. I can understand how this becomes a little bit more, maybe you might use this more when you're in programming mode, but I can see why some people would use it for interactive mode.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely overlapping between interactive and programming mode, at least for me. Because when I think about set, I always already think about gset, right? When the result of the output of command is used to set variables, client-side pSQL variables, so you can use them later. And I do use this sometimes. For example, even in loop, even with watch, it's interesting because, for example, you can monitor progress. You can, for example, remember previous data, including timestamp, and calculate interval. It's not always convenient, and sometimes I switch to using server-side variables, which like this set SQL command, right? So / set is pSQL command, set is client-side, and set without / is just SQL command, it's server-side. It's very similar to copy, by the way, right? Copy, when you, for example, export or import data, / copy is purely client-side. It defines where your CSV will be saved on your client machine, if it's different machine, or on server, and permissions needed, of course, and so on. So back to gset, you can do such stuff like you remember what happened, then you can use it in next query. And this already moves us to programming mode. And sometimes I remember I needed to combine client-side variables and server-side variables. And when I do server-side variables, I usually don't use set, because it's like it cannot be embedded to other queries, right? It's a separate like utility command basically, right? And like, you cannot put it inside your select or delete or something, or CTE, right? While there are two functions, quite weird functions actually, because they have second parameter, and you always need to check documentation. Current setting and setConfig, I think. Yeah, one is setting server side, setConfig is setting server side variable, and second parameter, I believe, defines if it's local to transaction or like to whole session, like basically global, not global for all sessions, but to your session. And current setting also has second parameter. It basically reads it, right? Second parameter also required. I don't remember meaning. I always put true. Yeah, like because naming is weird, and that's why it's impossible to memorize it, even if you have, like me, like 18 years of Postgres experience, right? So this is where I usually check documentation. And I wrote a lot of code, like many thousands of maybe even dozens of thousands of PSQL scripts. So it's so weird I cannot memorize it. Yeah, but second parameter for both these functions is what like worth paying attention to. And also like setConfig, current setting, they don't look like basically doing the same thing, but in different directions, setting and getting, right? It should be something get, something set, right?
I'll include links to them in the show notes,
like,
so we can all look.
I would prefer to have like GUC set and GUC get or something like this, right? And the good thing about server-side variables, you can define your own, and usually they always go with namespace with prefix, so something dot something, because without it, it's global. You like there are only roughly 300 of them, and this is how you control configuration of your server, right? So yeah, and a combination of these things gives you already opportunity to start coding. And since as both of us know, there is also \if, right? We are
Well, I didn't know this until looking into your code, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of already starting to look like Turing complete stuff. So you can start coding in this language, additional language on top of SQL. And I like it actually because it gives you a lot of possibilities to automate things. Right? If else gives you ability to, for example, handle different versions of Postgres. You can check version quickly, memorize it in a function in a variable, maybe server side, and then just using current config function, get it to client side variable, and then using if, have different pieces of your code working with different Postgres versions. For example, if you want to have something dealing with PG-star statements, we know they change sometimes. For example, in Postgres 13, more columns were added and existing columns were changed, so it's not backward compatible. That's why if you need some report, for example, from PG-star statements, you need several versions of it, right? This is where if is for these PSQL scripts is super useful.
Yeah. Even things like some of the really important columns, like total execution time, change name, not
Total
or look,
time.
recently enough that I know that change. But also planning time, for example, wasn't always in there, and you probably want to add both together if you want to look at execution time plus planning time. So when that's available, you probably should be summing them. So yeah, I can totally see that making sense.
Yeah.
While we I know this is super minor compared to like if, else if, or sorry, it's not else if, it's ELI, ELIF, elif.
Yeah, it's if, elif, else, and, or \and, or and if, \and if.
And if, yep.
This is also, if you deal with multiple languages like Python, C, Java, I don't know, Ruby, and also this, it's inevitable that you will be checking documentation when you write.
So one of the things that caught my eye when I was looking through Postgres_DBA was you were just using Echo as like almost like a user interface, and one of them just to show the menu of what's available, like what queries you can even run. And the menus, there were some weird characters, like some weird. It's almost like it wasn't Unicode, but it looked like kind of they're probably
emojis. You mean?
No, they weren't emojis. It's like it was color. It was. I didn't know what it was, so I pasted the echo line into my pSQL, and it just made the word menu pink, like bright pink.
Yeah. Well,
I thought that was a nice touch.
Right, but it's regular terminal fun.
Yeah,
it's not PSQL stuff. It's just.
I know.
And it won't work. Probably it won't work with some pagers, right? Some pagination stuff, and in some terminals it won't work as well. So it's like unfortunately limited. But yeah, it's for fun, and I usually use it to distinguish like success from failure, like errors from successful messages or warnings, like different levels, notices, warnings, and so on. By the way, do you know why everyone is using raise notice or raise warning in PGSQL while there is a raise info and raise debug? This is, just lack of checking documentation, maybe. Right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and since we touched gset, it's worth mentioning also there is gexec, very powerful thing. I usually use it together with a format, so we can basically have a dynamic SQL build from, like you have a select query with format, maybe, by the way, in some like while or something, or some loop, right? You have this, and you build some new query, and you return it as a string, right? And then gexec just executes it. This is also quite powerful in some cases.
Yeah, and I've seen the example in the docs, but also I've seen you do this for real when we were just testing something together once. You can use it to if you return multiple columns, it can execute multiple things all at once. So you can programmatically add 100 indexes all to the same column, I think was the example we were doing, or add the same index to 100 different tables that all have the similar naming convention, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. For example, if you want to create 100 indexes and don't care about naming, or maybe if you care about naming, you could just have watch command with specify number of loops and just format it gexec. And if you want to specify naming with some increasing integer number, you can remember what happened before and also memorize it using server side in this case, because it should be single query, so you cannot combine gx with gexec, right? And it's better to have server side using setConfig function, server side variable, and then you can just add 1+1 and have different name. But in this case, I remember we didn't care about naming, I think, and I just didn't use name specification and create index command, and you just create 100 indexes to check overhead, I think, right?
Yeah, that was when we were checking planning time. That was the planning time episode.
Yeah, it's a fun thing that we're still trying to polish that experiment and make it more like, looking good, and publish blog post about this. So I hope it will be finished soon, and we will have this blog post published. So what else do you want to discuss? \I or what? \O, input output, right? With different.
Yeah, I've seen I used with E.
Yeah, \I just imports something. It's good for programming mode when you want to structure your code base, PSQL code base. And \O is outputting, it's moving output from your terminal to some file, right? And
I think it's the equivalent of -O when you use it from a script, and I've used that so query plans can get really big. If people have several megabyte query plans, piping it to the clipboard or sending it to a file is way better for copy and pasting those around than trying to copy them from a terminal. If they're thousands of lines long. Yeah.
Right, but there's also ability to have both, right? To print it in terminal and save to file with \O and also pipe, vertical line. But important thing is that if there are errors, they won't go to file, right? Unfortunately.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
Wait, why?
Because output only successful results, result set goes to, not result set, also system messages like number of rows. This all goes to file. \O doesn't redirect errors, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good gotcha. You can't accuse me of always looking for gotchas and then bring them all up yourself.
Yeah, maybe it's just it's not just developed or something, right? And this is also the point when I usually again go to shell level again and use T-A, right? And use stdr, std out. And
what's T? So I'm thinking T is
TEE. TEE.
Oh, so sorry.
Not British T. Yeah.
No, I was actually thinking of I've used \T to, there's the beginning bit, and so sometimes you get stuff around the rows. So
tuples only, right?
So T for tuples only. Yeah, exactly.
No. This T, when you want to see things and also to save things, if you're in programming mode, in this case, you have your script, .psql script. You run it using PSQL. You can have pipe T-A, -N means don't overwrite, just append to the file. And you can also print, T also prints it, the output. And in this case, not to lose errors, you can redirect errors stdr to std out using, this ampersand and so on. And in this case, you have both errors and normal messages going both to files and to your terminal. And this is exactly how I like to see things and not to lose them with timestamps. For example, TS from more utils, TS, also good thing. You prefixing everything with timestamps, so you work and you also save everything to file. So if something goes wrong, you can troubleshoot, analyze, to do postmortem, root cause analysis, anything, because you have all the logs of your actions.
Yeah, and the other way around is useful as well. If you want it in the file for, like, if you want the file for reasons, you're getting feedback in the terminal of that it's actually working, that it's actually doing what you expect
see
it to do.
what's
That's pretty
happening.
cool.
Well, some people don't like this and say, let's not leave it and no hub. Let's use no hub. So like detach it and it's running in like basically in background, and then you can observe the file using just tail -f, right? Also fair.
Yeah.
Also fair. And this is how you can do a lot of quite complex coding using pSQL. And this can be building blocks for very, very, very complex automation. For example, if you use Ansible, basically it's running something remotely, and sometimes it's like in our case, sometimes it's a bunch of pSQL lines, and we run them remotely, and they can be important pieces of such things as like zero downtime upgrades, right? And
Yeah.
the only thing I must mention always, based on my mistakes from the past and my team's mistakes, when you do automation, don't forget -x, capital X.
Great.
Super
So,
important. Yeah. The -a is good, -t is good, everything. But capital X will save you one day, because if somebody left .psqlrc configuration file with timing on, for example, all your logic comparing output to something, and it can be super broken and can be unnoticed in tests, unfortunately.
So capital X ignores pSQLrc.
Yeah. So it switches to default behavior, and it's good for programming mode. psqlrc is good for interactive mode. It's bad for programming mode, because if you have new server and you don't have this, well, it depends on some organization, right? Maybe we have a rule to put some specific psqlrc everywhere. In this case, it's okay. But if you don't know what will happen in future, it's better to just ignore those like adjustments.
I like doing it with X. If it's a script, like it's a script already, why not set any config you want in the script and then use -x? Like that makes way more sense to me than relying on something else.
Maybe there are options here. It's good to develop something here, not just to forget about this. This happens all the time, people, and I did it as well. We forget it, and then on staging we don't have psqlrc, on production we have, and boom, it's not working. On even worse, it's working in the wrong way, right?
Yeah, good point. Yeah,
So
nasty.
that's why I like -x, capital X. Yeah. Okay, there are we maybe touched like a couple of % of what's possible as usual, right? We wanted to call it advanced PSQL, right? But there are many more things.
So we can point people. I'll include a link to the PSQL docs in the show notes, and also there's a site by Letitia Avro we mentioned last time as well, called pSQL Tips. And if you go to it, it's a website that will just give you a random tip about pSQL every. If you could set your homepage to it, or your new tab page to it, and you might learn the odd. That's like a way of discovering new things that you might not know it can do, which is quite cool.
Yeah, let me mention a few more things I wanted to mention.
Great.
If you
Go.
find yourself spending too much time inside pSQL like I do, you will probably like !, because it can run anything, right? You can, for example, run ls, ps, stop, anything you want, SSH. So it's basically running something, some shell right from pSQL. And also I like the fact that I think in Postgres 16, it started to be possible to work with extended protocol and to debug some stuff from there. And also I don't use it, but it's so quite powerful. You can run you can send multiple statements in one shot if you, instead of semicolon, use /semicolon. Right. In this case, you can combine many different queries and send them at once. Sometimes it's also
Are these documented? I don't remember reading about these.
Yeah, it should be documented.
That's quite cool.
Yeah. So I don't use it often, but it's quite powerful. It also shows like so you can do so many things in right inside PSQL.
Yeah, I just did backslash question mark, which, by the way, is like at least 50 lines of information straight away. And then, yeah, backslash exclamation mark is listed even in that.
Backslash exclamation mark I use all the time because I just don't want to quit from PSQL, right?
Yeah.
And we don't need to mention that quitting from PSQL is /q because you can right now write exit or quit. Since I don't know, from version 14, 15, I don't remember when it was added, maybe earlier. So this is
possibly the easiest to quit command line tool ever.
It's not VI style anymore, right? So yeah, a lot of stuff is possible, and it's good that, again, this is the only one single official client in Postgres project. So it's worth learning it and using it more. Yeah, we mentioned in the episode about comparing it to graphical interfaces. We mentioned that terminal is good for expected automation, like basically for automation. You have expected behavior, you just program something and you can put it to CI/CD pipelines or anywhere, right? Unlike like if you have some graphic interface, what else? Like it's not good. Of course, you can use Claude computer use, which was released yesterday. Right? I'm joking. I'm trying to like insult you already. So yeah.
Well, I don't think it's a great argument in terms of you can use a graphical tool to come up with the query you want to run, via the shell. But yeah, some of the interactive. So no, I was saying interactive when I mean the opposite. Some of the stuff we'd be talking about to programmatically use pSQL. It makes sense. Obviously, you're going to use pSQL eventually, so you might as well do it. But I still find it sometimes easier to play around with queries in a graphical interface. Personally,
I understand
editing them and things.
Yeah, I understand that. Of course, if it's huge query,
exactly,
and you are not using a VI by default, I can understand this.
Yeah. Good point.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Good. Yeah, I like this thing. And hopefully we will see development of this further and further. I mean, PSQL features, I feel potential to have more and more. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Nice one, Nikolai.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Catch you next week.